Hi, this is Cheryl Gallant, your Conservative Member of Parliament for the reality-based riding of Algonquin, Renfrew-Pembroke. Conservatives strongly disagree with Carney's unilateral decision to recognize a Palestinian state. We do not think this is the time to reward Hamas for starting a war. The real problem is what we think doesn't matter. What you think doesn't matter. Under our system, this is not a decision for Parliament or the people of Canada. Issues regarding foreign relations are reserved for the executive branch. Maybe that made some sense back when monarchs ruled over Europe. It may have even made some sense in the 20th century. Yet the issue over the role of democracy and foreign relations highlights the central failings of the two main views of international affairs that have shaped the world. It's time for this to change. For much of the last 100 years, the big debate in international relations has been between what is called the realist viewpoint and the liberal internationalist viewpoint. Realists believe that the character of a state does not matter. They think whether a country is a democracy or a dictatorship, it would act the same in dealing with other countries in pursuit of the national interests. The liberal internationalists believe democracies and dictatorships can coexist in the same rules-based international order. Both groups are very wrong. Whether a country is a democracy or a dictatorship matters. When I use the word France, I might be speaking about the geographic place called France, or the nation of French people, or the French state. In a democracy, the government is the people. Regular viewers may have noticed that I rarely use the word China. When I do, it is often to refer to the actual land on a map we call China. But when I speak about the government in that country, I always refer to them as the communists who control China. In a dictatorship, the government oppresses the people. Democracies and dictatorships operate in fundamentally different ways. One is a voluntary association of people, the other is a criminal enterprise. And yet democracies and dictatorships are given equal standing in organizations such as the United Nations and the World Health Organization. For liberal internationalists, the United Nations is their grand cathedral. But over the last 20 years, it's been slowly overtaken by the communists who control China. For those who subscribe to the realist view, one need only look at the difference between the dictatorships in Gaza and the West Bank. And then you'll see why rapists and kidnappers poured out of one territory and not to the other. The one territory is run by a gang of aging socialist terrorists who have grown fat and rich through corruption. The other is a territory controlled by a religious death cult. Two de facto Palestinian states, which should have the same national interests, adopt two wildly different strategies in pursuit of those interests, because one is run by Tony Soprano and the other by Charles Manson. Those who believe in the realist view should have learned a lesson from Russia's invasion or Hamas's invasion. The United States seems no longer interested in maintaining its international rules-based order. They've been convinced the small costs outweigh the massive benefits. We need a new approach that's based in actual reality. Call it democratic realism or the democratic internationalism. The idea is that democracy matters in international affairs. We need new approaches and new international institutions built by democracies and for democracies. But before we try to conquer the world with our bold idea that democracy is good and dictatorship is bad, we need to practice it at home. The decision to recognize another group of people as a nation should be made by the Canadian people through their parliament. As a member of parliament in a democratic country, before we can even debate the issue of recognizing a Palestinian state, we should listen to the people in Gaza and the West Bank to hear what they want. The Palestinian Center for Policy and Survey Research, based in the West Bank, has been conducting in-person interviews with Palestinians since the conflict began. The most recent poll from May of this year found that 57% of Palestinians oppose a two-state solution. When asked what their leaders should prioritize, 41% said ending the occupation and establishing a state based on the 1967 borders. 33% want to return to their towns and villages lost in 1948. 13% believe the priority should be one of building a religious society, one that applies to all Islamic teachings. Just 12% believe the priority should be building a democratic political system that respects freedoms and rights of Palestinians. According to the same poll, if a free and fair election were held today, Hamas would win the most seats, and its current leader would be elected president over the current president. One of Mark Carney's so-called conditions for his unilateral decision to recognize a Palestinian state is that the Palestinian Authority, which controls the West Bank, must commit to hold elections next year and that Hamas may not participate in the election. To be clear, these are not actual conditions. Carney said he will formally recognize a Palestinian state in September if the Palestinian Authority agrees to make those commitments. They don't have to keep the commitments, just make them. This shows the entire proclamation is a farce. For 20 years now, there have been 3 states: the democratic nation of Israel, the kleptocracy in the West Bank, run by the corrupt Palestinian Authority, and the terrorist theocracy in Gaza, governed by Hamas. The Palestinian Authority has no presence in Gaza because all of its officials were killed by Hamas. They cannot hold elections in Gaza, let alone exclude Hamas. Engaging in a giant fantasy where we all pretend Hamas does not control Gaza and that elections will be held next year to establish a democratic Palestine will not feed a hungry child or free a starving hostage. Carney's unilateral decision is all about domestic politics, and it has nothing to do with building a lasting peace in the Middle East. Before we demand democracy in Gaza, we should practice it at home. That's called leading by example. The decision to recognize another nation should be debated and decided upon in Parliament. Your voice should matter. Carney first promised he would reach a comprehensive trade and security deal with President Trump within 30 days of his election. That promise was immediately abandoned and replaced with a promise to secure a limited deal by July 16th. Then it was July 21st. Then August 1st. Well, August 1st came and went. And while Mexico was given an extra 90 days, Canada was hit with a 35% tariff. Carney claimed he had the economic experience to cut a deal. So far, he's conceded everything that's been asked of him, yet there's no deal. In fact, Carney has gone from promising to remove the tariffs to saying his goal is to limit the tariffs. Many in the liberal media are hard at work trying to offer up excuses for Carney to explain why he seems to have abandoned his elbows up approach in favor of concessions and subservience. I'll save them the effort. Higher taxes was Carney's plan all along. It was quite literally the very first policy Mark Carney announced in January. Mark Carney wants to impose carbon tariffs on the United States. By failing to reach a deal, Carney is building political support for renaming his retaliatory tariffs as carbon tariffs. By failing to reach a deal, Carney can continue to claim that we are in an economic crisis. Liberals love claiming there's a crisis. It allows them to grab more power in a minority government. That is what the liberals really want. More power and your money. Live from Ottawa, this is Cheryl Gallant.